I'm feeling a little bit self-conscious about how much I've been talking about this idea of property managers becoming rental property investors until I had this really deep conversation with Mark Brower on the way back from the Grand Canyon hike that we did last week, when he turned back and asked me, is property management too hard to scale? And we started talking about all the different kind of like factors of what's coming and what's happening, and based on Peter Lohmann's list. So I used that as an opportunity to go live on Facebook, give my thoughts on it. And it's really now a rabbit hole that I'm very committed to. I wanted to share this live that I did on Facebook with you. So this is me walking on the beach, pontificating on this thing. It's like a short preview of essentially what we wrote our newsletter on. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, this is where I go really deep into kind of like the most interesting topics that are arising from this podcast and the conversations that come from this podcast. Highly encourage you to subscribe. If you go to Beehive, it's called AI and Property Management, but you can send me an email. We're gonna link it in the show notes, but check this out. Let me know what you think. This is just like a stream of consciousness, walking on the beach at sunrise on Facebook Live. So it sounds a little bit different. I might be calling out to somebody that joined in, but I wanted to reduce the friction on publishing this thing, and I wanted you to hear it and get your opinion. So feel free to reach out to me on this. Let me know what you think about this one. Enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go.
This one's not for everybody. This one's just for the property managers today. Man, driving back from the Grand Canyon, Mark Brower does what he normally does, which is look at me and go, hey, Pablo, I got a question. And then follow up with a highly introspective, I would say, I don't know if it's contrarian, but just like very looking at things from a completely different angle. And he tells me he's been thinking and pondering a lot about the quote by Warren Buffett, where Warren Buffett, famously says, don't try to scale things that are too hard. Sounds simple, right? It is Warren Buffett, so you got to listen to that. And he was asking himself, when I look at the list that Peter Lohmann put together recently of the 20 biggest property management companies, you see maybe like 2 or 3 property management companies that have over like 10,000 doors. Then you see maybe like 5 that have north of like 2,500. Then you see a handful at like 2,500, and then it just drops from there. And when you hear the stories of the big property management companies, right, they've all grown through acquisition. They seem to all have, I don't know if all, but you hear stories of super high churn in these big roll-up outfits. Is that the business that you're trying to build? So he asked me that question. We got into this discussion. I'm happy to kind of tell you about the discussion that we got into, like what I believe. I would also add to the idea that, I don't really know if what's too hard to scale or not. I don't know what your goals are, right? Like that's number one, right? Like what are your goals? What are you trying to build? Are you trying to go big? Mark is a guy that is very focused on maximizing his contribution to the world based on the gifts he was blessed with, and he was blessed with many gifts. Right, so like we can start at that frame, so that if you're feeling triggered or whatever, like, oh, what are you saying? Am I like $300? No, I'm not gonna do that voice. But like, dude, if you have a 300 door property management company and you're clearing 250, 300K a year, that's sweet, right? That's a really good living. The question is like, if you're trying to go really big, if you are trying to build a big business or have a big financial windfall, or even if you're at this like 300 door thing and you want to stay there and you don't want to continue to complicate your life for less and less marginal gains, what to think about. First, I just want to validate that I think it's a really great question. I believe that property management is profoundly changing in a rapid way, in ways that the human brain can't really comprehend because of the 3 giant context shifts that have all collided. Everybody knows I'm sure you know, I talk a lot about AI. That's a context shift everybody's in. That one's happening a lot faster than everybody thinks. Mainly, here's the example, it's called Moore's Law, right? Like we have doubled in computing power every 2 years, and that's created an insane rate of change. in the world of technology. So if you think back to like 2005, just 20 years ago, businesses were wondering whether or not to put out yellow page ads. Sorry, dude, but that is completely gone. Facebook and iPhones didn't exist. Just think about the world, how different it was 20 years ago. Small businesses like property managers weren't sure they really needed a website. So let's just start there. Moore's Law, that happens. Right now, we're under AI law. AI doubles in power every 6 months. So that's 4 times faster than that Moore's Law thing, which means that the rate of change in 20 years is going to happen in 5 years. 2030 is going to be as different to 2025 as 2025 is to 2005. So just let that one sit. That's one change. The other 2 changes that are less obvious are the affordability crisis, the stratification of wealth has made it so while maybe from 2005 to 2020, property management kind of just flew under the radar. Now there's a giant target on it, right? Like there's the war on profit. There's all these regulations that people are pushing for. That subject is not going away anytime soon. And that means that regulations can change under you. Major regulation shifts can be major disruptors to the valuation of your business, right? Both ways, right? Positive and negative. For example, like Uber was a positive variation, right? Like they changed the law so that a completely different model happened. It was great for Uber, sucked for cab companies, right? That could happen with property management. Then the other big change is the generational wealth transfer. Boomers are in the middle of this like 17-year kind of like generational shift where they're transferring their wealth. They're passing away and transferring their wealth to their children, millennials and Gen Z. And like I'm the oldest of the millennials, right? I'm 44. I have a really hard time accepting that there isn't an app for everything. And if you make me get on calls or like print stuff and sign it, or like these kinds of old things that we used to just kind of like live by and get away with, I'm gonna look for different ways to do it. And you bet your ass that like the moment that an app comes out to like that is going to take away the majority of the pains of managing my own property, I'm going to be very open to it, right? Like the same way that I was open to staying in Airbnb in 2012, the same way that I am using Turo as an app right now to rent cars because the rental car experience sucks for most people, right? So those 3 things happening makes the question even better, right? Like this idea of, is it too hard to scale based on the numbers that there's really only like, maybe 10 rental property companies that are at this like attractive number. Many of them have this like high churn. They've all grown through acquisition. That's just like based on the past. If we look future facing, you could be doing all that, entering this like low stakes probability tournament. And when you finish building it, everything has changed from under you, right? So that's the other piece that people aren't talking about. So what is there to do about that, right? Like I'm not here to doom and gloom it, but it's the reason why I've been getting a lot hotter on the idea that property management is such a valuable skill set operation, but I don't think that that business doesn't have to be the main business if you've built that, right? Like that business can be used as a real estate flywheel the same way that JWB Real Estate Property has done it, right? And for a long time, all I've known is JWB Real Estate Property and how they've brilliantly been able to help people invest in real estate and grow a 400-door portfolio themselves, grow to own 20 blocks of downtown Jacksonville. But now I'm seeing it more and more in the property management ecosystem. And particularly, I've had 3 different conversations around it of 3 different approaches. One is Tracy Strike out of Oklahoma City. He kind of, most of these, all right, he came into it as an investor. He also, like JWB, realized that as an investor, if he built out his own property management company, this would help him. And what he's done is he's been able to he's essentially inserted property acquisition into every difficult owner conversation, right? Owner seems unhappy. The first thing that pings, most property managers think, oh, okay, well, maybe I can just sell the house for them and make the commission. Tracy thinks, all right, let me have a conversation with this person and talk about, how maybe he could acquire the property for him. That's one version of it. And he's been growing his door count. I think he's got like 100 something doors. That's pretty impressive. Then there is Nicholas Cook out of the Portland, Oregon area. He's a guy probably a little younger. And when he got in, he wanted to be a real estate investor. He didn't have enough gray hairs in it, so he built a property management company. But now that he's got a couple gray hairs, now he's realizing that he can use this as his flywheel. he's creating a fund, right? Because he's not in a cash flowing market. He's creating a fund with a really, really long-term outlook. In these funds, the operator's the risk. He has this long track record as an operator first before even being a fund manager. And that's what he's building, this like responsible, long-term, resident-friendly, everybody wins fund. And then there's Ed Kirch, who we are publishing the podcast about him today. Ed Kirch has a 300-door property management company. He owns 220 of them. He literally just uses his property management capacity to build his real estate portfolio. And he kind of just said it at the beginning of the podcast. He's like, yeah, landlords aren't fun to work for. I'd rather do it for myself. So, that's what I've been like really stewing on these days. I've been stewing on this idea of should property managers, I just thought it was a good idea for property managers to think about whether or not, instead of focusing on doors under management, they focus on doors acquired, or at the very least add it to their skill set, because it's been proven to, make your service better, make it easier to sell, right? It makes your service better because you grow purchasing power and relationships with vendors. It makes it easier to sell to other landowners because say, hey, I'm an investor too, right? And it just continues to add to your wealth. But, this question by Mark has really made me think, how much harder should property managers go at this? Because when I first asked him about it, before this conversation, actually in the Grand Canyon, before we're coming back, he was like, well, I don't know, man, because when I put money into my company, I get a 20% return. Show me a real estate investment with a 20% return and I'll think about it. But I think we got to think beyond these spreadsheet returns and look deeper into return based on effort, return based on agency and control in your life, and return based on the risk of the ground not shifting from under you after you've worked so hard to build this company. And that's why, this idea of should we be doing it, how to do it, is something I'm pondering. I'm going to release a newsletter on it this week, and I invite for you to read it. I also have Tracy Strike's episode is on the podcast, the Property Management Framebreakers podcast. You can find Tracy Strike. This week, Ed Kirch is being released. And in a couple of weeks, we're releasing Nick Cook as well. So you can hear it straight from them what their models are. And I invite you to check it out. But, more than anything, what I admire is Mark Brower's ability to ask these hey, let's look at this thing the other way around. Let's turn this thing over, look at it from the bottom up, look at it from the sideways in, and ask these tough questions. Because in this time of really rapid change, I think you need to be building towards the new future as opposed to just maintaining the past. Have a great day.